For somebody trying to make the jump into data engineering, what are some of the important skills, any resources that you found that really helped you, or maybe any tools that are often needed?
I have interviewed people before, like candidates for data engineering roles. If you don't have that real experience that you can show me, then the next best thing you can do is you can tell me about a project that you worked on.
I'm Naman Pandey, and in this episode, featured not expert is Sam LaFell. Sam is a solutions architect at Snowflake and has extensive past experience in data engineering, which is the subject of our discussion
I
today.
said, let me learn enough about Python to at least have these conversations. And that one decision fundamentally changed the trajectory of where my life was headed.
What are some tools that are must-haves on your resume, and then maybe if there are any niche or lesser-known tools that are only now becoming prevalent?
I've known a lot of people that have gotten hired out of college, like 21, 22, 23, as solutions architects at different companies.
Just interacting with my data engineer friends, which I have a grand total of 2 of.
3 now.
Yeah, 3 now. There you go.
I used to feel like, no, I'm not touching AI. It's too new. It's changing too much.
In line with our theme of learning from somebody just 2 steps ahead instead of an expert, my goal with this episode is to supply you with all the knowledge, tools, and skills that you need to either start or transition into a career in data engineering, and what this career track entails exactly.
Both of those are very helpful courses to jump into, as well as the...
This is the Ready Set Do podcast. And subscribe for weekly episodes featuring not experts from all walks of life ever and daily clips. And now, without any further ado, here's Sam. Welcome to the Ready Set Do podcast, where we learn from journeys of not experts who are just 2 steps ahead of us. Sam, welcome.
Thanks.
Excited to jump into data engineering and explore that field. Before we jump in, I like to begin always with what is your controversial opinion / hot take on the overall field of data engineering as you perceive it?
Sure. Hot take. Data engineering is not maybe one of the least engineering fields that has the name engineering in it.
Interesting.
And why is that, right?
Yeah.
Data engineering is a lot of things. It's product engineering. Data engineering is stakeholder communication. Data engineering is a lot of things other than just how can we most efficiently get the data from point A to point B, right? There's a lot of things within data engineering that you don't necessarily know about until you're working in the role, and then you see, oh, like this is actually a really big part of my job is to not only do it but also tell other people why we should do it like that. Or not only the how, because I think we learn all about the how. A lot of times, though, our job becomes the why.
So I definitely feel called out here because that's exactly what where I land in terms of if you had quizzed me that, hey, what's data engineering, that's exactly what I would have said, is that you have things called pipelines that you use to get data from point A to B, and that's that, right? But yeah, so as you said, clearly there's so much more to that, and I would love to explore that. But before we kind of make our way to that, can you help just contextualize where data engineering lands in the overall, quote unquote data umbrella roles? So I know data science, and then obviously, which was the other one, analytics, right? So I know it has to do somehow with these things as well, but if you could please help us delineate where one starts and the other begins, or where one ends and the other begins, that would be super helpful.
If you find anyone to do that, let me know. I think, and why do I say that? Because data engineering is inherently also data analytics. Like,
Really? Okay.
one is contained within the other, and sometimes analytics is contained within engineering. I'd say that's the most common trend, but also, sometimes you need to be a better analyst than you do an engineer to be a good engineer. So I would say data analytics and data engineering really, really have a lot of overlap, and it can be hard to kind of delineate between the roles. If you're already a really good data analyst, you can probably be a decent data engineer as long as you pick up some maybe software engineering chops. But let's try our best, right? So data engineering, thinking about source systems, thinking about where does data come from, how is data created, like the big bang of any data, right? Where is it coming from? That's what we spend our time thinking about, right? That's what data engineers spend your time thinking about is source systems and data and where does it come from. And then you also spend your time thinking about where are you going to land it and how is it going to land and what And that can also have a lot of overlap with like application developers and software engineers, because sometimes you're not the one creating that data. Sometimes you're the one just taking the data from wherever it landed. If we go the route of, okay, the data engineer doesn't think about the source, they only pick it up from wherever it landed. Let's say it lands in an object store like S3. Sometimes that's the first place the data engineer touches it, and then they push it through maybe into Snowflake or into Iceberg, and then Databricks Unity Catalog is picking it up or something, right? We push it into a usable format for then data scientists and data analysts to work with. So I think that's maybe the clearest delineation of a data engineer, is you're picking up data in some sort of raw form, whether it's the most raw form or like a basically the raw form just landed somewhere that you can access. Then your analyst is touching it and however they need to touch it, right? A lot of times that's going to be building data. When you think about something like Snowflake or something like Databricks, uh, the term like medallion architecture has been coined, which the medallion architecture just means 3 stages of data,
Okay.
or at least delineation between data stages. So you have your raw, which is a bronze layer, your silver layer, and your gold layer.
Okay.
And then that's also
Interesting.
sometimes unclear who's responsible for those layers, but a lot of times it'll be the data engineer who kind of helps build the pipelines to pass it through the layers once the analyst and the data scientist know how they need to receive data in. The
Interesting.
analyst a lot of times will be responsible for like dashboards, interacting with product teams, doing a lot more of that business talk, right?
Hmm.
Like talking the talk of the business and then coming back to the engineer and saying, okay, this is what we need, this data that flows through every day for the dashboard, the Looker dashboard, or the Power BI dashboard that the analyst is building. And then the data scientist comes in. Again, data scientists really need to have a lot of good analytics skills as well. And the data scientist will create a model, right? A lot that we're talking like a machine learning model to do some sort of predictive or prescriptive analytics. So even in that, it's analytics. It's just forward-facing analytics or forward-telling analytics. We're trying to predict the future instead of explaining why something in the past happened. We're trying to explain what's going to happen in the future. So data scientists and data analysts also do a lot of similar work. And they have a lot of overlap in the skill set. It's just you have a different focus, right? Different idea. So I don't know if that was at all helpful because there's a lot of things that do have overlap here.
No, that was very helpful, especially to put things into perspective in terms of how closely these roles relate and adapt with each other. My one follow up on that is, and I think, yeah, I have wondered about this before as well, just interacting with my data engineer friends, which I have a grand total of two of. So, the thing that
Three
always
now.
trips me, yeah, three now, there you go. So, the thing that always trips me, Sam, is so you mentioned you set up those pipeline infrastructures and all of that is done. What I always wonder is once you do that, isn't it supposed to be, at least on paper, kind of a one and done type deal where once that's set up, every time, as you mentioned, when you have new data coming into your S2 or wherever, it will just continue to flow. So, can you help me understand what circumstances come in clearly, regularly, that make you go back again and again and have to make new pipelines and make any changes to that?
Man, I'm sure a lot of people have had those questions in the past. And it's definitely something that I've been asked before. So with data engineering, in data in general, right? Data is not software engineering in that, I made the button, I wrote the code for the button on the web page, and now the code just always compiles and always runs, and it's always a button on the web page. Like that's not data. Data is people doing things online or in person, and we're trying to record actions people have taken. And if anyone knows anything about like software testing, right? There's a whole field of software testing where we just try to break things or like data quality, even quality testers, where we try to break things. We try to essentially imitate what we think people might do to pass through some bad data and try to see how we'd handle that. But we can't always get 100% of those situations. And so
Hmm.
what happens with data pipelines, and especially data pipelines that are only written using a portion of the data that actually exists, Because a lot of times when you're writing like a pipeline, you'll sample the data and you'll build a pipeline based on just what you know about the sample of the data. You don't always get everything. And so what does that mean? It means that you define something as a like an integer column, right? Because the number should be like, I don't know, 1 through 10, right? But then somehow there's a 9.5 in there.
Right. There's
So
always a
and
9.5.
now our whole pipeline breaks
Yep. Yep.
because our column was defined as an integer, but a
Integer.
9.5 is not an integer, and now everything breaks. And you would think, wow, you guys are so smart. Like, how did you not handle that? But a lot of time, we build so specific in data warehouses for like speed and performance and optimization, right? We want to define that it's an integer so that way there's a lot of optimization happening behind the scenes with your code. So if the data warehouse knows it's an integer, it can handle the whole column as an integer and things go faster, right? Why did the pipeline break? Okay, it's because we got some bad data came in. And bad doesn't always mean bad. It just means unexpected, right? We've never seen it
Exactly.
before.
Yeah. It doesn't have to be malicious necessarily. It's just something that wasn't uh, proactively prepared
Right.
to be handled. Absolutely. That's super helpful. I think at this point would be a great time for you to, if you don't mind, share just a brief snapshot kind of your career, the various places that you've gotten to wear multiple hats. I know currently you're a solutions architect, which we will be getting into in just a bit, but yeah, just want you to kind of set the context for where all of your, um, information really and insights are coming.
Great question. How can I tell my life story in less than 5 minutes? Let's find out. So when I was in college, right, we'll go back 10 years. I was in, and we'll fly through this. So I was doing non STEM related activities, right? I'd majored in communication, also in Spanish. I'd minored in psychology. I was doing my best to stay as far away from math and programming as I could.
Was that intentional or was that just how it was at the time?
That it was a little bit of both, right? It was a little bit of ignorance into when I was moving from high school to college. I just didn't know what I wanted to do, and I knew I liked talking to people, so I said, let's just go talk to people all the time. That'll be my career.
That makes sense. Yep,
And in a way, that is my career.
that's
We'll get
true.
into
Yep.
that. And then, so going through those couple years of university, I learned a lot, and I had a good time. But then after university, right, it came to okay, now you need a job. And of course, my 4 years of university learning how to talk didn't really get me a great career, we'll say.
Yeah, I mean,
And
through no fault of yours, it's just tough, right? How many jobs are there to begin with? Maybe I'm ignorant, but yeah, it has never seemed like a exactly like a thriving market to me.
right. And they tell you, or at least they told us when we went into communication as a major, you can do anything. Right? That was the thing that got you. It's like, oh, I can do anything? Yeah, but you can do anything also means kind of like you can do nothing.
Exactly. Yep.
So, you get out and I had a couple jobs and I met some really cool people. I learned things, of course, along the way. And luckily my first job um did kind of it really changed my path and my trajectory. So I was making calls to random people, right? I didn't know these people were cold calling, essentially sales, and I was selling courses. And some of those courses were Python courses. And I said, wow, whenever anyone responds to me, which was like 1 out of every 100 people, I didn't know how to talk to them because everyone hung up on me. So once I got past the initial, like, why are you calling me? I
Hmm.
didn't know how to continue those conversations because I knew nothing about Python. I was used to getting hung up on, and overall my morale was just pretty low. So I
That
said
sounds rough, man. Yeah, I
well, it was
mean,
tough. It was really tough.
yeah,
But something happened, right? And I would say this is a takeaway: is your curiosity can take you places you maybe never imagined it could take you. Because I said, let me learn enough about Python to at least have these conversations, and that one decision changed the rest of my life. Right? It fundamentally changed the trajectory of where my life was headed. So in learning just data camp, started on some Python. This was 2018, and I said, let's just get a little bit of Python knowledge. Well, that little bit of Python knowledge turned into, I really like this. I started playing around just with pandas and Python and learning about how to bring in a CSV and how to analyze it on a pretty
Right.
basic level.
Wow.
I said, there's something here, right? Something about the patterns and the numbers, and I feel cool like typing on a keyboard and like doing panda stuff. I was like, wow, I can make something happen here. So I talked to my alma mater, which is where I went for undergrad. I went to the same place for grad school. I talked to their
And
program
sorry, where was this?
this
Just
was at NC State in Raleigh, North
okay.
Carolina. Yep.
Nice, nice.
So I talked to one of their programs, one of their master's programs, and I said, "Hey, how do I do this? Like, how do I get in here? What do I need to do? What do I need to know?" They gave me some kind of classes I need to take to get prepared because I didn't do enough math in undergrad,
Hmm.
so I had to get
Yeah.
prepared for that for some sort of grad program. And that was a decision I made because I said, well, I could do this on my own. I don't have to go to grad school, right? I could self learn for and build a portfolio and build projects. It'll probably take me 3 to 4 years, right?
Hmm.
And then I could probably break into the space with my own learnings and my own portfolio. And I identified that. And then I said, or I can cut that time down to like 1 year,
Hmm.
just do grad school. But of course, the trade off there is money, right? I
Yep. Absolutely.
took a loan and went to grad school and decided to go this route. I would say though, for me in that position and like my time value of money and the way I made those pros and cons, like 100% worth it. Pre grad school to post grad school, I tripled my salary, and of course, we all love that, right? We all love
Wow.
the
That's
the
incredible,
money
man.
element of the
Yeah.
data field, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
But I also found something that I really love doing. I found something that I wake up every day and I'm just happy to do it. Of course, you have your days where maybe you don't love work, but overall, like this is a career that I really love. Honestly, over the last couple years, I've hopped around a lot. I had really focused in data science until this was September of 2023.
Okay.
I took the jump. I found an opportunity. I've been preparing myself for this opportunity. I had started to identify that data engineering was something I was more interested in than data science necessarily. And
Okay.
there's reasons for that, of course. But I took the leap in September of 2023. I was given a pretty challenging opportunity to go work and essentially re-architect and rebuild a pipeline that was written in Scala Spark. And I also had a team working with
Wow.
me. And so I
Okay.
had to learn Scala. Like I had to learn Scala, Hadoop, Map, Hive. I had to learn like all these different things like on the fly
Wow.
at this role, but it really helped me grow as an
Hmm.
engineer. And I think that's another thing, right? You have to be curious and you have to be willing to step in somewhere that you don't know anything about and figure it
Hmm.
out. Otherwise, you'll probably just fall on your face, or you won't go as far as you think you might want to go. And that was it. Like from that point on, I haven't looked back. I mean, I'm working as a solutions architect now, but I still very much am a data engineer at heart, with some data science chops to go with.
Very cool. Yeah. First of all, that was so concise, which I know was your goal, but also so illuminative in terms of finding out where you've been, what drives you, and kind of, just all the roads that you've taken. I do want to double click on two things from what you just shared. The first being, um, if you could please take us back to that time where you were first exposed to Python, where you were trying to learn it. And obviously, up until that time, I'm sure you had basically no exposure to any of it, like, programming, math, whatever the case might be. Can you help or can you talk through I understand the motivations that you were like, you have to sell these things, so it makes sense that you would understand it. But what were some of the things that you did that really helped you in terms of overcoming that initial, where it just seems so overwhelming? It's like an ocean, there's so much, where does one even start? So I'm asking this from the perspective of a person that, like you at the time, is not from the tech field in any way or form, but
Right.
is trying to teach themselves programming or whatever the case might be. So any tips or insights you could offer there would be
Oh
helpful.
man, people are gonna like it.
That's okay. Yeah.
You gotta be comfortable being uncomfortable. I think is the first thing. It's just you have to get used to existing in a place of growth, in living in that growth and living in being uncomfortable because it's not gonna come easy. Even even the basic like print statement, right? You're like an import of a package like pandas or something with maybe just like a basic transformation. What I would call a basic transformation now in 2018 was not a basic transformation for
Oh
me,
yeah. Yep.
right? And then maybe a print to try to print like a mean of one of the columns of that data frame, for example, right? That's
Hmm.
another thing. Everything I did was based around data. Uh, but I had to get comfortable being uncomfortable, and then I had to push myself past the like I can't do this, right? When I hit the I can't do this, that's when I had to push harder.
Hmm.
And now, right, with AI and with ChatGPT and of course all these other things that are flying around our heads every day, it's easy to not do that, right? It's easy to just go like, okay, like 3 minutes, I can't figure it out. Let me ask ChatGPT.
Yep.
Like I didn't
And then
have that,
paste the
right, when I
solution
was learning,
in and call
right?
it a
I
day.
mean, I
Yeah.
had Stack Overflow, so a lot of times it was like, you know, trying to piece together some stuff from Stack Overflow and see if it applied to my situation, which early on it did, but as you get further and further on, like things stop applying to you because you're getting kind of specific.
And then the second thing that I wanted to double click on was you mentioned later in your journey you um found data engineering to be more fun, or you were attracted to it more than data science, which is what you had been doing until that point. So I am curious to explore what about data engineering pulled you towards it.
Right. I think data engineering makes data science possible, right? And so a lot of also analytics, I mean anything really,
True.
but
Yeah. Anything. Yeah.
a lot of
Exactly.
places that I had been before had not had great data engineering practices, right?
Hmm.
And so because of that, data science and data analytics suffered. And so you'd have data science or data analysts that were spending most of their time finding and cleaning data, which is a very common issue, actually, not just the places that I was. And that wasn't right. I just felt this really big disconnect between my title, right, and what the outside world thought I did, and what I was actually doing on a day to day basis, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that disconnect kind of was really uncomfortable for me, even though like why does it matter, right? I mean, you have the title, you do something at work. Why does it really matter what you do at work? Like it just did, like should it matter? I don't know. For me, it mattered, and also I didn't feel fulfilled in the work that I was doing every day because again, it wasn't my job, so I felt like this isn't contributing to what I think I want to be achieving.
Right. Or the reason why you were hired in the first place, right?
Right,
Was
right.
probably
Hired
not to
under the
clean
guise of
data. Yeah.
like we're gonna build some models, right? And you're gonna get to deploy these things out to production and blah 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 blah, right? Uh, now that never really happened. Build a model, but the model was a one-off model that I put into a PowerPoint for some exec to present one time to them, and then that model never made it into production. So I never felt like I was actually having an impact in that. I was brutally honest with myself sometimes and said, what if I just disappeared tomorrow? What if I just didn't log on tomorrow? Right? Like, would they miss me? Would they even know I was gone? And a lot of times the answer to that was no. Like,
Wow.
probably not.
That's
And
pretty humbling. Yeah.
that sucked. I hated feeling like that. But it was necessary, right? It was necessary to acknowledge that I wasn't where I wanted to be, and that's not the same for everyone, right? Other people might have the experience of if they don't know I'm working tomorrow or not, great. It means I can go work remotely by the pool,
Hmm.
and drink a pina colada or whatever, and like have
Right.
a relaxing. That's not me. Like when I'm logged in, like I'm locked in. Like, I'm wanting to get stuff done, and I'm wanting to make a difference.
And yeah, so I think the recurring term or theme there is just impact. It was important for you to make as much of an impact as possible, and I think you just realized that where the most impact was, just from your experience, sounds like up until that point, was data engineering. And then naturally from there, say somebody's or trying to, yeah, for somebody trying to make the jump into data engineering, what are some of the important skills, any resources that you found that really helped you, or maybe any tools that are often needed? I know a lot of this information is just you could just Google, but obviously I'm just trying to understand from your perspective any flavor that you could add to what somebody's Google search might result in. That would be super helpful.
Google's gonna tell you that you should have side projects, and unfortunately, that's true. You should have a side project. You should do something on your own that shows it shows your curiosity, and it shows that you're willing to take the time and the effort to do something that doesn't necessarily contribute, to the company you're working at, but it shows that you want to learn this and you want to do this. The second thing I'd say is there's some theory that you need to know, right? There's some things in data engineering that exist that don't exist in data science, or things you don't think about in data science. And there's some books like Fundamentals of Data Engineering that you should probably read, by Joe Race. He's awesome also. That you should probably read when you're like getting into the field. And then once you're in the field, right, there's a lot of other books you can read. But I say that's the first one. Side projects, right, pet projects to show that you can do this.
What are some examples of good projects that people could be doing?
Good question.
Or if there's a resource that you're aware of, I would be happy to link it. But if you know of any, that would also be helpful.
A good project is something that you care about, right? A good project is something that you're interested in. That when you talk to me about it, I have interviewed people before, like candidates for data engineering roles, kind of in a similar spot there. When at this stage, you don't even need to talk about optimizations. You don't even talk about, hey, I cut down pipeline execution from 40 seconds to 10 seconds. So the project that you're showing me, you pulled from an API, or you even if you generate some random data, I think that's fine as long as the data's like kind of challenging to work with. It's not just like I generated 3 integer columns. Like give me something more, a little bit more than that.
Yeah.
And then I went from this source system into this landing stage, right? I moved it over to this spot, and then this is how I did it. So I think just showing that you can move data, and also if you can have a visual for me, like an architecture visual,
Yeah.
because I build those a lot at work, and that is something important. That even if it's bad, right, it at least shows me that you're thinking about, okay, I need to present this to someone else. Someone else is going to have to understand what I did. So what's the best way to communicate that information? And we go back to the very beginning of this call when I talked about how data engineering is not just engineering, it's stakeholder management, it's communication, it's product and project management. So there's that piece of it is going to come in too when you're showing off a project. If you're not showing code, you're showing me the architecture diagram and you're telling me about the project. If you're showing code, then I'm going to expect some other things like comments, right? You should have your code commented. It should be documented. You should have a README so we understand how to use it or how to walk through it. So it's a lot of communication and documentation that's going to go into your project that as a junior, you might not be thinking it's that important because you might be thinking the code and the performance is really important. It's actually not, because your code and your performance is going to be bad because you're a junior. We all know that. So what's actually more important is your ability to communicate what you're doing, or at least what you're trying to do. If you can do that, then I can work with you on the technical pieces. But what I can't work with is someone who doesn't know how to communicate or doesn't want to communicate.
And so what about so yeah, just so I understand this, generally so I'm just trying to put myself in the shoes of somebody that's making a project. So I start with, say, a bunch of data on some S2 server that I just got off like a student discount or whatever. We'll just assume that this is still free. I know there are other resources one could use also, but yeah, not to get into that too much. So we start there, and then you're saying that one should use these libraries or any libraries on Python to bring them to Python itself, and then like do some sort of analytics, separate them, clean them, and etc., and then throw them somewhere for somebody to see. Like, can you help flesh out these gaps that right now exist in my head, at least?
So yeah, let's say you're hitting like a public Amazon S3 bucket,
Okay.
right? And that's where your data lives. So you're taking that, and then we're going to assume in this context that the data is not ready to go into like a Power BI or a Tableau just yet.
Perfect. Yep, that's
There's other
ideal.
steps you need to do to get it into that Power BI or Tableau. So what you connect to the data in Python, you connect to that S3 bucket, right? So that's your first step. And then past that, you need to decide how you're going to how you're going to build the data, whether you're just going to bring it in its raw form and then send it, transform it however you want to transform it, and then send it to a destination which you'll then pull from Tableau. Or if you want to add another layer to this, we can now have 3 layers. We could have a bronze or a raw layer, which is that raw data living in the public S3 bucket. We now have a silver or transformed layer, which is, I did some things to clean the data. And now you have a third layer, which is your gold or your curated zone or layer. And at this point, this is where the data should now be ready to throw into Tableau or Power BI.
Amazing.
And what's the difference in that third layer is usually just it's an aggregate of some form, whether that aggregate is built on an hourly basis or a daily basis, right? We're assuming some sort of time interval here because the data that we work with in organizations, there's a time element to everything, right? We did this many sales last week. We did this many sales this week. There's time kind of throughout here, unless we're maybe talking about something else like biology or something, right? There's other fields where maybe time is not as important, but in this space, in most spaces, like time is the constant
Yep.
factor.
100%.
So we aggregate it up in the curated layer, and then at this point we're ready to send it in Tableau or Power BI. And I think it would be good in a project just to have just some like a dashboard or a couple
Yeah.
charts that you can show off and be like, okay, here's the data in its raw form was this. I took it through these 2 steps of transformations to get it into the gold layer, and then here it is like plotted or charted in one of these tools. And you can do everything for free, right? You don't have to spend any money on any of that. And it's just a way to be able to understand that you know how to work with data and transform it from one layer to another and then present it out to some sort of audience.
Amazing. Yeah. That now makes complete sense. And yeah, really appreciate you filling in the gaps there that existed because, as somebody that, so I come from tech also, but just not, I guess, the data space as much. I'm more of I've been a transformation analyst. So I work more so with low code, no code tool environments. It's funny because when you were discussing that, one of the tools that came to mind that I use and that you probably don't use as much just because you're probably more advanced is Alteryx. Are you at all familiar with Alteryx and how that works by chance?
I've come into scenarios where I'm rebuilding something that had previously existed in Alteryx,
Okay.
but I've never worked in Alteryx. But I do understand that it's a drag and drop data
Hmm.
transformation tool,
Yeah,
essentially, kind of similar
exactly.
to Data IQ, but a little bit less fleshed out, I think, than Data IQ.
Yeah, gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know that one. I've never used it. But what I was getting at was, yeah, it it would not have occurred to me that essentially what Alteryx does is where you can have, a tool or an object to clean up rows or to remove duplicates, blah blah. It sounds like what you laid out is all of that being done just straight up in Python. And yeah, that is kind of the most fundamental light bulb moment that I had, which you know yeah, and like that really helps put things into perspective, so I appreciate you sharing that. um and then from there, what are some tools that are must, definitely like must haves in your on your resume, and then maybe if there are any like niche or lesser known tools that are only now becoming prevalent that you would obviously be aware of, that would also be appreciated.
Sure. Python, obviously a must. Uh, unless you're doing like, there, of course, some people might argue me on this, but I do think Python is a must just because every company is using Python
Hmm.
um, in some way or another, and Python really is the biggest language in the data engineering space right now.
Uh-huh.
There's of course other languages like Golang and Rust that are also kind of gaining popularity in this space.
Okay.
And then within Python, um, think about something like Polars, which is a Python Polars is a package which essentially is replacing pandas as
Okay.
something that can handle a lot more data, right? Process a lot more data in the same amount of time that
Hmm.
pandas do it. And there's reasons behind that we won't get into now and how those work behind the scenes. But
Yeah.
Polars and also DuckDB DuckDB is also a really good tool. It's just, again, within Python, within the Python umbrella.
Hmm.
But another good tool to have an understanding of. Those are the two maybe like lesser known
Hmm.
that I would speak to. But again, they require like a Python knowledge, right? It is kind of umbrella within Python.
What I am curious about, however, is when we were syncing earlier, I know you shared that you happen to be one of the younger employees in the solutions architect domain. So I'm very curious to explore how all of your expertise as it pertains to data science slash engineering kind of in some way must have bubbled up to make you go down this route. So I am curious to explore what that looks like, and what drew you towards this, and if this is a viable option for more. I mean, I know you can't really speak for the gen pop, but for most data engineers, would this type of path make sense?
Sure. So I think I also want to level set that maybe one of the younger ones. I'm currently at Snowflake. So maybe one of the younger solutions architects at Snowflake. Maybe each company is going to have a different idea, right, of what they
Hmm.
want from their solutions architect. I've known a lot of people that have gotten hired out of college, like 21, 22, 23, as solutions architects at different companies.
Gotcha.
So those companies maybe will have some sort of onboarding and training program that'll last 6 months to a year where they teach you all about their product, right? And then you become a solutions architect at that company because they took you from the ground up to teach you all about that product. And
That's
I think
helpful.
that those are also really great roles to get into. I have friends that have done that and have come out really well from those programs. Currently, as a solutions architect at Snowflake, the landscape here is a little bit different because it's not just that I'm a solutions architect at Snowflake, right? It's that I majored in communication. It's that I used to be a data scientist. It's that I'm in a data engineering mindset right now. And what does that mean? It means I can talk to you about anything that Snowflake does and not just pull from the Snowflake experience, but pull from the previous experience and pull from, a previous life. And then because we've been here 5 years across data spaces, I'd spent 4 years and two more after that in college and after college doing a lot of practice with communication and a lot of practice with talking to people, right? We're talking about years of storytelling
Hmm.
and
Yep.
years of data. And those two things together are what make me able to do the role right now at Snowflake. And I think a lot of companies in tech will have a similar experience with solutions architect, that it's not just what that company is good at, but it's what the other companies around that company are good at, and what generally you think about when you're working in data engineering. Like, what does a data engineer think about on a day-to-day basis? Right? I need to know that. What does a data scientist think about on a day-to-day basis? Like, I have to know that too. And so
Absolutely.
because of my experience, that puts me in a really good position to be where I am today, where I have a mix. Right now, what I do is very heavily technical and very heavily non-technical. Right? I talk to people about their problems all day, and then I also work out ways to solve those problems. So I have to be able to do both. I have to be able to talk to the CTO, and I have to be able to talk to the data engineer. So that's why I am one of the younger ones, because it takes a lot of different skills to be working as a solutions architect, specifically, I think at Snowflake and across tech in general.
Makes sense. Totally. And it does sound like it feels pretty closely interrelated to me, or intertwined maybe is the better word, which and I'm referring to data engineering and solutions architect stuff. So, were there any skills or tools that you had to learn separately, or was it more of just consolidating all of the know-how that you've accumulated over the years to now do this specific job?
I've had to get a lot better at storytelling and non-technical communication, because even though I have the background, since I became a data engineer, I'd not had to kind of flex those muscles. And so as a solutions architect, I've had to practice a lot of storytelling, had to practice a lot of the point A to point Z and helping people kind of follow a story, as well as other areas that I'd never thought about, like
Hmm.
platform administration, systems administration, from like a logistics and a cost perspective on Snowflake. Also, when we have things like role-based access control, so we think about like giving or providing access roles and users to groups. Like those are things I hadn't thought a lot about before that I have to think a lot more about more now. So it's more eagle eye. I have to be able to do like 5,000 feet or 50,000 feet or whatever they call it in the business world. I have to be able to do a lot more of that than I used to have to do. And then I also now have to think about AI a lot more because I do have things kind of people are asking about AI and how does Snowflake use AI and how do they use Snowflake AI at their client at their company, and so
Mhm.
I have to have a lot more conversations around that. So I'm reading some books and doing some things on the side with AI just so I'm better equipped to have those conversations.
Which is a perfect segue to what was going to be my next question, which is that what can you share about? I understand if there's stuff that you're not, supposed to talk about, but yeah, what are some things when it comes to AI in the data engineering space that maybe current job seekers in this domain should be looking at, maybe aware of, that would help them?
Yeah, yeah, AI is huge right now. I think it will be huge for the next couple of years, and that's I used to have different feelings about that. I used to feel like no, I'm not touching AI. It's too new. It's changing too much. I think AI, especially generative AI with LLMs, large language models, and then MLMs, or LMMs, sorry, large multimodal models are LMMs. Um, they're not going anywhere. They
Hmm.
are going to stick around, and we need to be able to know how to have those conversations. We need to also understand the limitations of what Gen AI can and can't do, and so we can help ourselves by. There's a couple courses online. Like one is by Hugging Face, another is by Stanford. I definitely recommend both of those. Different levels of technicality, of course, but both of those are very helpful courses to jump into, as well as the AI engineering book by Chip Hewen. I think just having your vocabulary sound and understanding how to talk about AI and the different methods to fine tune or to prompt a model and which
Hmm.
models are meant for which situations. I think you need to be able to have those conversations even if you don't have a project with AI. I'm sure that would be helpful also. But even if you don't have a project with AI, you can at least talk about it and you're not making things up, right? You're talking about it and you know that you're saying the right things and approaching it from the seat of this is just something else I have to learn, right? Don't treat it like a fad. Don't treat it like magic. Don't treat it because it's not any of those things. It is just now another topic that we need to understand.
Hmm.
You would be kind of better off to also understand NLP, natural language processing, because that's kind of the predecessor to LLMs.
Exactly.
Is just summarization. Summarization existed before ChatGPT, and then relating one thing to another with just a big body of text existed before ChatGPT. So if you can understand some of those kind of precursor concepts as well, it'd be very helpful.
Super great resources you threw out there. I'll be sure to link them in the show notes for anybody that's curious. And yeah, really appreciate you taking the time today, Sam. I've learned so much. And as somebody that's not really from even this field, and so that gives me a decent amount of confidence that even somebody that is would still be able to take away so much. So really appreciate you taking the time. And just wanted to add one last thing that I talk to a lot of guests because of this, and as a consequence of the podcast. And very rarely do I come across people that actually care about what they're doing, like at least when it comes to their professional life or their work. Like, because most people will be really obsessed with, say, something that they're doing for themselves or as a hobby or whatnot. And it's just rare, and it's so refreshing, honestly, to find that there are in fact people that love working and that actually believe in the work that they do, and they put themselves in positions where they are able to do the type of work that they want to do. So yeah, just wanted to share that random observation. So yeah, thanks so much, man. Really, really appreciate it.
I appreciate it, and I think that's the what you just said. I work hard and I care about my work, but that puts me in a position where I can do the work that I want to do. I think is exactly why I work hard and work extra, do things on the side when I can. Appreciate it.
Of course. That brings us to the end of that episode with Sam LaFell. If you would like to support me, the easiest way to do that is by subscribing on YouTube and leaving me up to a 5-star rating on Spotify or any of your favorite podcast apps. It also goes a long way if you go and share this with your friend, or if you tell somebody that, hey, I just found my new favorite podcast. Thank you all for your time. New episodes every Wednesday. Catch you all in the next one.